Good evening.
So we have some technical opportunities tonight. So I will not be wearing a microphone, and hopefully people online will be able to hear. Welcome to everyone who's joining online. Welcome to all of you who came here tonight after a beautiful day. So, my name is Tim Wicks, Gengyoko Tim, dark jewel turning towards the light. I really like my Dharma name. And I currently serve as tanto, or head of practice here at City Center. And I came to San Francisco Zen Center in 2001. I'd had another practice for several years. My first practice was with a Vipassana teacher who was trained in Theravadan Buddhism. And the point, as I understood it in Theravadan Buddhism, was just to sit. My teacher loved sitting, and he would speak about coming here to San Francisco Zen Center and leaving when we would all come up to go to service in the morning, because he just wanted to sit. And I sat. I quickly developed a sitting practice where I would sit for 40 minutes in the morning and 40 minutes in the evening. I became hungry for sitting. I almost became addicted to it a little bit. It made a lot of sense to me. In this form of sitting, in Theravadan form of sitting, you face outwards towards the teacher, or out towards the room. I didn't understand this thing that we do here, which is sitting and facing the wall. If you've ever been down into our meditation hall, we sit and we face the wall. And I didn't really understand that at all. It took a while for me to understand that what we're being trained to do is to fine-tune an awareness of the subtlety of our senses. Facing the wall, we're being asked to sharpen our perception of what's happening in the world, to become sensitive to what's happening in our lives, and also the lives and even the non-living phenomena around us. Our practice is not just to connect with sentient beings, but also non-sentient grass, trees, and walls. We understand our interconnectedness to all things. We're made up of water, carbon, and calcium. Our Zen way is to develop an awareness of everything you're sitting with in the meditation hall. Although we're facing the wall, as our founder in China, Bodhisattva, did, we're aware that we sit with others in the room. The rustle of clothing, a cough, someone is crying quietly, which is a safe thing to do in the meditation hall. These are all sounds to be aware of that mark the presence of others, and there's something more that is making us aware of each other and the room itself. There's a charged energy in the space that we're being trained to engage with. The energy says, we are alive right now. Together, we live. The space is charged, and there's an overlaying of presences, an intermingling of the energy of human beings with all their pasts, futures, and the present moment. Once again, we are shown we're not separate, we're not alone. Eihei Dogen was our 13th century founder in Japan, and in his Bodhisattva's 4 methods of guidance, he speaks of giving, kind speech, beneficial action, and identity action as methods of practice in the way of the Bodhisattvas. He speaks about how each one intertwines with the others so that there are actually 16 methods of guidance. I'd like to focus just on his section on giving for this talk. So we are Mahayana Buddhists. Mahayana Buddhism has as its ideal that of the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva is someone who practices towards awakening and forgoes entering nirvana till all beings can awaken together. In giving practice, non-greed, says Dogen, will bring you great merit. What we do in our Mahayana practice creates merit. Merit is worthiness or excellence. We have an interesting relationship with merit in our Mahayana way. We create it by helping all beings to awaken together, and then we give it away. We dedicate the merit from our action to the benefit of all beings. This is one of the characteristics of our practice that differentiates us from some other Buddhist traditions. We give as a practice, and the result of that giving, merit, is itself given away. Even if the gift is not your own, there's no reason to keep from giving, says Dogen. The question is not whether the gift is valuable, but whether there is merit. What is it that we give away that is not our own? Of course, it's the teaching. The teaching does not belong to any one person. Even the teaching ascribed to the Buddha does not belong to the Buddha, but is the product of the awakening of all beings together. I alone, said the Buddha on his awakening, together with all beings awaken. The power, says Dogen, of what he calls causal relations, in other words, the power of our infinitely complex causes and conditions, our karmic relations, says Dogen, when conditioned with giving, causes giving once again. So there's a ripple effect that occurs, an intermingling of giving upon giving as a result of our gift. Dogen quotes the Buddha. When a person who practices giving goes to an assembly, people take notice. You should know that the mind of such a person communicates subtly with others, end quote. Here is the ripple effect of our practice once again. We're learning to pick up on this subtlety. It's an act of intimacy to communicate with subtlety. To communicate in this way is a quiet and unobtrusive way. It's an open way of being in the world, and although it is subtle, people become aware of it and are affected by it. People want to be near an open, giving person. Openness cultivates trust. The mind of a sentient being, says Dogen, is difficult to change. How true and sad this is. For years I tried to stop drinking alcohol, and no matter what I did, I wasn't able to do it on my own. My life was a consistent experience of shame. And how painful it is when a loved one is unable to end destructive behavior, even when they know how harmful to both themselves and others their behavior is. The pathways and conditioned habit patterns of a mind are difficult to change. Sometimes, in more subtler forms, even hard to recognize. Before successful sobriety, I didn't understand that I was afraid most of the time. I just thought that I was wrong, in the wrong place, with the wrong people, at the wrong time. I didn't recognize that this constant tension was fear. Dogen says that to give away the teachings of a former life, and in many ways that's what sharing in recovery, that is responding to addiction, is giving away teachings, lessons learned from a former life. Dogen speaks about the way to change the mind is through the very act of giving. We talk in recovery about being of service as a treatment for addiction. Serving other addicts as a way to affect, in a positive way, the old habit patterns of an addicted mind. Mind is beyond measure, says Dogen. Things given are beyond measure. In giving, mind transforms the gift, and the gift transforms the mind. It's now understood scientifically that the repetition of positive psychological patterns can affect brain plasticity in a healing way. Investigate, investigate, investigate. Dogen is always telling us the mind is beyond measure. Investigate this. In the vast expanse of the mind, there's the possibility of new perspectives. Is it possible for someone who's been engaged only in ruin for years on end to become a compassionate and kind person? Keep on changing the mind of sentient beings, admonishes Dogen. Keep giving the teaching. The greatest gift is giving of teaching. Everything we do has an effect on ourselves and on others. Even if you do nothing, this has an effect on the world in which we live. Dogen speaks about what he calls causal relationships. Everything that happens is the result of the causes and conditions that give rise to actions. Because this happened, that happens. We look closely at what we call karmic reality. In giving, we see this ripple effect once again. When something is given, it has a subtle effect on the many other things that it touches. This, again, is the doorway to the interconnection of all things. This is true also for giving to the self. When we think of the merit of giving, we're usually thinking about giving to others. We have to consider giving to ourselves in a deeper way, especially in the Western world. Many of those who come to Buddhism come because they have neglected the self. The Dalai Lama famously didn't understand what was meant when low self-esteem was explained to him. The low self-esteem that I'm constantly astonished at, both in myself and in others. In part, I think it comes from our roots in Christian Puritanism, but also in the related celebration of individualism, which often leads to an unhealthy isolation. Individualism is held up as a virtue in our culture, often with ill effects. In our lives, we seek control. We seek control because we want to be safe. We want stability. What we're clear about as Buddhists is that there's very little that is completely stable in the world. We grow old, we get sick, and we die. And we spend much of our lives and energy on clinging to the opposites of old age, sickness, and death. We want youth, good health, and not to die. Wanting control makes us avaricious or stingy. We become selfish and averse to giving, protecting what it is that we have. Greed and desire for control can become determining factors in our behavior. We see ourselves as separate and want to control and protect what it is that we have. We are born in this present life because of the action of giving, the giving of our parents. In response to the merit of this giving, we are grateful, and our gratitude practice acts as a spiritual doorway to ease and spaciousness. I always thought that I was just a burden to my father. He was always under financial pressure. I had 3 sisters. I thought that I was just a source of stress for him. And I was in some ways, but I was also a source of love and wonder. My father made immense sacrifices for me, for which I can practice gratitude. Practicing gratitude enables us to recognize all the opportunities we have for giving. And sometimes it's our stories that are the greatest gifts. One of my favorite parts of the Zen practice period is a 3-month period of intensified practice, are the way-seeking mind talks. This is when a practice period participant tells the story of how it is that they came to practice. Usually the stories have something to do with some kind of suffering. Only a few people whose lives are free of suffering come to a practice that centralizes an end of suffering. Not so many people come to this practice when they're completely happy. I enjoy way-seeking mind talks in the same way that I enjoy the stories that are shared in addiction recovery. They're called shares because you are sharing your experience, the strength you showed at getting into recovery, and the hope that this form of suffering is now behind you. The verb to share became popularized by the recovery community. It means to give of yourself. What happens when you share? The practice is based on intimacy, the truth of exposure and vulnerability. Bearing yourself is seen as giving. This allows others to join with you in your suffering. It allows others to suffer with you, which is the definition of compassion, to suffer with. Compassion, therefore, is a kind of giving, both giving and receiving. When someone relates to your story, you are receiving their compassion. We are interested in the interplay of the giver, the receiver, and the gift, how they come together to make one thing. The gift is nothing without the receiver of the gift itself. Dogen mentions the importance of giving to yourself. The Buddha said that if you search the entire world, you'll not find anyone more deserving of your compassion than you. Know the difference between greed and giving to yourself. They are a world apart and have a completely different feeling. Greed has a basis in fear. Know the internal experience of fear. Study it. Giving a gift to yourself without fear is giving based in love. Come to know giving which is based in love. Investigate also giving without a concern for outcome. Practice non-transactional giving by being aware, once again, of your internal experience when you're giving the gift. Not trying to get something when giving is living with an open heart. Give to yourself and your family. They gave you your life. Even if it's something as small as a particle of dust, says Dogen, the act of giving transforms. Even with something very small, you can rejoice in the act of giving, because each act of giving has the potential to change a relationship. Giving, or dana as it's called, is the first of the paramitas. The paramitas are the skills we develop as bodhisattvas in training. To Dogen, when giving, you're transmitting the merit of the Buddhas, and you're practicing the acts of a bodhisattva. And finally, I just want to say that there's a lot of fear in the world in which we live in today. A lot of uncertainty and instability. And it's important to practice compassion when we see fear and when we see the results of fear, which is isolation, anger, and the desire for control and greed. It's easy to react to greed and avarice with anger. To remember what it is like to be afraid is to practice compassion. It's in practicing compassion that we can give to the world, and the world that needs our giving giving to both yourself and to others. In Dogen's words, an act of giving has the potential to change the whole world. And I just want to end up by reading a poem. It's called Love After Love, and it's by Derek Walcott, and I want to thank Tova Green for reminding me of this poem that was lost to me. I knew it a long time ago. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. Thank you all very much for listening. Ino-san, I think we have plenty of time for questions, don't we?
We do. We don't have a microphone, so people can raise their hands and you can call them.
Okay. And when you ask your question or make your comment, if you can speak loudly so the rest of the room can hear you. Please.
Darshan, I was wondering that you're saying that this letting go, which is the suffering or self-blame, which we call, is very hard to let it go and forgiving yourself. Even we say that we do most of the thing for our own satisfaction or controlling most of the time. We think that's what gives us satisfaction, but it ends up doing bad for people around us and mostly for us. But this guilt which stays with you after things happen. So how do you let it go of that thing? Because it's something which you struggle, but it's very hard to forgive yourself.
It is. It's very hard to forgive yourself. And the solution for me is Sangha, community, being with other people, being with other guilty people especially, other people who had to go through this process of changing the deep karmic patterns of our thinking. And patience, forbearance, being patient, but mostly being with other people who are going through the same process. So there's some people who were really happy when they came to Buddhism, but most of us come because we're suffering, and that's really encouraging to me. Even though it's painful to be around other people's pain, I'm around people who are in that process of learning how to let go of their guilt and their shame. And that's really what the solution is for me, I think. And, I mean, I don't know that I'm ever going to completely be free of shame. I don't know that I'll ever be completely free of it. And I'm not sure that I even want to be, because knowledge of it is what helps me to be closer to other people who are going through the same process. So it is hard, though. Just keep at it and join with others. And it's really important to talk about it. recovery for addiction, you're kind of forced to talk about what you did and who you are. And that's really helpful. We don't talk as much as might be helpful in our Zen practice. We're trying to get a little bit better at it, but talking about it is also really, really important with other people, other friends. Thank you for your question. Yes, please, please.
Sorry.
Yes, no, please.
Just this, because we have been taught and we see around also most of people saying that sharing your dukkha, suffering, is not bad. You should share love. Sharing pain with another person is considered very bad in every phase. And you also feel that why you're just nagging on the same question again and again and again, going it. It's like making your own wounds again and again bleed, and in that blood you are making another person also a part of it and suffering. So we are getting, after some time we are some kind of getting the pleasure out of it. So how to avoid that? Or if you can...
Well, that's where skillful means comes in. There's a time to talk about it and a time not to talk about it. And the main thing is to be aware of what's happening when you're talking about it. Is it something that's keeping you in the same place? Is it something that is maybe... I know my own shame has been something that has at times been a form of being self-centered. It's a way, shame can be sometimes a way of shutting yourself off from the rest of the world. And that's not good and not healthy. Telling your story because you want someone else to relate to it, that is a good thing, that's healthy. But we need to be aware of what's happening inside when we are talking about it. There's definitely a right time and a wrong time, so there's an appropriate use of our stories and what it is that happened to us. Thank you. Yes, Maurice.
Thank you for your talk. Thank you for bringing up the shame topic. Myself, I'm sure a lot of other people can relate to past mistakes and shame and embarrassments. I like to think of myself as have moved on and forgiven myself and treated myself with compassion. But then how do you cope with the people that, well, remember when you did this? Remember the way your life used to be? Like, I think I've improved. How do you deal with that situation? Any advice?
Well, you know the story of Angulimala, don't you?
No.
Angulimala was apparently a mass murderer in the time of the Buddha. And he became a follower of the Buddha. And you know, they would go to villages to beg for alms. And people would see Angulimala and they would throw food at him and everything. And because he had killed their relatives. And you know, he would complain to the Buddha about how it is that he's on his way on the road to enlightenment now, and people should see that he's a good person now. And the Buddha said, "This is karmic reality for you right here, baby. You got to take it." So I don't know about you, but I did a lot of damage when I was out there. And every now and then it comes back to remind me of who it is that I am. Because it's true that I have moved on for a long time now. It's been 25 years since I had my last drink. But I'm still reminded sometimes of who it is that I am. And I'm a good person, but I also have this other person inside of me. And I'm not afraid of that person. It's a part of who it is that I am. I'm a whole being, and that includes where it is that I came from, even though I'm far away from there now.
It reminds me of that saying, two things are possible at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you for the talk. I was curious, what was the catalyst from you turning from your teacher, what you were studying, to facing the wall, going from the previous type of Buddhism to actual Zen? Was there a reason you switched, or some kind of catalyst?
Yeah, you got to be really careful when you start coming to Zen Center. I didn't like it here at all. I didn't like it. I didn't like all of this stuff. I didn't like the bowing. I didn't like the bells. I didn't like all the ceremony. It reminded me of the royal family in England, which I was hostile towards. But they had a meeting in this room called Meditation and Recovery, which we still have on Mondays at 7 o'clock. And I was coming to that meeting. That meeting was for people who were interested in Buddhism and who were in recovery. And so I just kept coming to that meeting on Mondays only, and I would come in straight into this room, and then I would leave. And then I heard they do Wednesday night Dharma talks and Saturday Dharma talks, and I was really into Dharma talks at that time. I was fascinated with the whole process of Dharma. And so I would come, to those Dharma talks, just come into this room and then leave. And then I noticed they serve meals here. So, I walked into the building, they were going to the building, and started eating meals here. And when you start eating meals with other people, you start to make friends. And I made some friends. And it was just a few years later that it was probably, the crossover practice was probably 3 years. And then I just stopped going to the other one. And the reason why I stopped going to the other one, I hope you don't mind my telling this a little bit longer, is because of the Mahayana ideal of the Bodhisattva that I spoke about in my talk. This idea that we practice, move towards awakening, but we forego nirvana until all beings can be awakened together. That struck me as democratic compared to the Theravadan belief, which I saw in my Sangha, my Theravadan Sangha. The Sangha was really supporting the teacher's enlightenment. And that was very clear to me. I became a part of the leadership of that Sangha, and that became very clear to me. And here, there was a lot more democracy. We've got like 3 abbots, and they're constantly changing the abbots. And it just felt more democratic here. So that's why I made the change and woke up one day and I was a priest. Yes, please, Victor.
Tim, thank you so much for your lecture today. I'm curious to further investigate the difference between actions coming from greed versus giving to ourselves from a place of, self-love. And what's on my mind is these sayings you hear in pop culture, like love yourself, treat yourself, a billion other things of this sort. They're sometimes shallow and empty, and it also feels like capitalism has co-opted some of these ideas to such a point that I feel some delusion about what's the difference between the two of them. If there were any other thoughts or instructions you had on this idea, I'd be curious to hear more.
Well, no, I don't have any other thoughts than the usual one, which is pay attention. Really pay attention to what it is that you're doing. Pay attention to what it's like to be afraid. Pay attention to, right now, there's a lot of, because there's so much instability in the world right now, charities are suffering. We just had a fundraiser here that usually hits its target, and we didn't hit our target. And some people think that just is a part of, because of the way the world is right now. So we have an opportunity to look at fear that we have around instability and really pay attention to what's that feeling like inside, and how is it affecting my actions? How is it affecting my capacity to give? And then to pay attention that there's no question about why it is that you're giving, that you're really giving from a place of love. Those are two radically different internal experiences. They're just really, really different. And by paying attention, that's how it is that we can, I think, forego capitalism's usurping of many of the ideals that we talk about in Buddhism. By really, truly paying attention. That's where the hollowness ends and the depth begins. I don't know if that's any help at all to you. How are we doing there?
That's all the time.
That's all the time we have. Okay, thank you very much. I didn't do something really important, and that is I didn't thank Central Abbot David for looking after this temple and allowing me to sit in this seat tonight. Thank you very much.